In the city of Glasgow, many cyclists within the city are trying to make a difference, whether it be through alternative travelling, taking up benefits that can greatly improve their health, and providing environmental security by lowering city emissions if they were to travel by car. Why are these challenges so persistent? Well, it's down to if people are ready to take up cycling as an alternative use of transportation, and is the city really ready to implement these changes to account for cyclists altogether? From the years of 2009 to 2017, a survey was conducted within Glasgow's city centre to monitor cycle activity on a 2-day period, and by 2017, the survey concluded that there were approximately 4,654 cyclists entering the city, whereas there were only 4,357 cyclists that were cycling out of the city. There does seem to be a noticeable difference in the amount of people that are actually travelling in and out of the city when you compare these statistics to the year before, where in 2016 there were around 5,125 cyclists entering the city compared to the 4,561 cycling out, which goes to show that there are people using cycling as a viable alternative to the likes of cars, trains or buses. Even services such as Nextbike provides many Glasgow citizens as well as tourists to get about the city through renting a bike for £1 per 30-minute bike ride, which provides for plenty of opportunities for people to get about the city with the cheapest, healthiest and environmentally sound way of travelling. Even though Glasgow City Council mentions the environmental and health benefits to cycling within the city in their 2010 to 2020 report by saying that cycling will be the biggest participation activity in the city by 2020. Although cycle routes with over 300 kilometres of paths have been provided throughout the city, many cyclists may say that the city itself isn't ready for these kinds of changes, as it may take years for these changes to take full effect, and Glasgow has enough on its plate as it is in terms of its environmental awareness. With these ever-growing changes and concerns taking place about Glasgow's overall environment and how its pollution can affect the city and its citizens overall, I got the chance to speak to Neil Robertson, the manager of Alpine Bikes within Teesel Glasgow Outdoor Experience, to get his expert take on the topic of cycling and where he thinks cycling currently is as a viable mode of transportation, and whether Glasgow is currently ready to commit to these ever-growing changes to protect the environment.
I think it gives people access to routes to and from work and to and from leisure destinations that they wouldn't have otherwise known about or even looked at. The canals were all redone in 2000, and since then there's great routes up and down the Forth and Clyde Canal. They're constantly maintained and resurfaced by Sustrans. I mean, for example, from here you can cross the street and you can get to the canal pretty easily within maybe less than a quarter of a mile, and from there you can go all the way to Balloch or the Falkirk Wheel, and very little of that will be on a main road. I think there's a little bit through Dumbarton and that's it. So I think if people are aware of these things, then it opens up a huge possibility for them in terms of travel and transport and getting out there.
Would you say cycling is a better alternative for travel in Glasgow in terms of environment and health?
In terms of environment and health, yeah. I mean, cycling's got a very low carbon footprint. So parts, you need to replace parts and things like that, but it's infinitely cheaper and more sustainable than, say for example, a car or a bus or a train or a taxi. And I fully accept the fact that you're not always going to be able to cycle everywhere, but if you can and it's going to make a difference to your life personally and be easier, then why not? It's a good thing. In terms of your health impacts, it's really good for your immune system. All the air you breathe in and stuff like that. They've done studies into it, and people like in their 60s, 70s, and that sort of age group, and they found that their immune systems were a lot better than people that didn't cycle, and it's partly just to taking in that fresh air. The other study I read recently said that transport to and from work, they did a study on who was the most affected by pollution fumes, and I think the highest out of the lot was taxis, and I think it's probably because you're in an enclosed area. So once the fumes get into the car, taxi, bus, or whatever, there's no real place for them to go after that. You're going to be breathing them in. Whereas on the bike, you're surrounded by a huge open air, so there's a lot less pollution getting to you. So you might think if you see somebody sitting on a bike, in the middle of traffic, that they're in a worse situation than you, but they're actually not.
In terms of the environment and cycling within the city, would you say that Glasgow's council is doing enough to impact climate change?
No. I'd say, given that Sustrans are the people that manage the canals and stuff like that, I'd say they're doing more of a better job. Cycling Scotland as well, maybe, they're doing, their part. But in terms of if you look around the city, there's not really much in the way of cycle lanes. Like I said, there's the odd little bit of road that's like, if you look at the bottom of Argyle Street, prime example, there's a great little cycle lane, and it must be about, 200 yards long, if that, and then it just disappears. And when you go across under the bridge, Central Station, there's nothing on the other side of it. So, it's what are you supposed to think with that? It's if that continued all the way through the city, it would be brilliant, and there'd be a lot more people using it. But I think the main thing that puts people off cycling in the city is that, there's not any cohesive or decent routes like that. There is plenty of cycle path. Most of it is Sustrans though, so I think they could do a lot more. And also in terms of what I was saying before about people's awareness and their skill sets for cycling and signalling and things like that could be done, and that wouldn't take a lot of effort or cost a lot of money to address that.
So, it's clear to say that Glasgow might not be as prepared as they previously thought in terms of their environmental plans to improve and fix the overall state of Glasgow's climate, carbon emissions output, and providing an alternative, safer and more environmentally friendly way to use a variety of transportations. Glasgow City Council can't make these kinds of changes perfect, but they can definitely make them better, which is something that all Glasgow citizens expect, and with these ever-increasing changes to our planet, we can only hope that these changes to environmental policy can be implemented sooner rather than later, before climate change gets any worse than it already is.